After the defeat at the Battle of Poltava, the Swedish army lost the initiative and could hardly hold back the enemy's advance. The kingdom lost most of its overseas possessions. Only the Swedish navy, the strongest in the Baltic, prevented the enemy from invading the Scandinavian peninsula. In 1711, Peter the Great began building galleys. These small ships, moving mainly with the help of oars, were able to operate in the coastal skerries of Scandinavia, which could not penetrate the heavy line ships of the Swedes. In 1713, the Russian army, with the support of the galley fleet, occupied southern Finland and came to the coast of the Gulf of Bothnia. Then the galleys, using the Åland and Stockholm skerries, could attack the Swedish territory. The only place where the enemy could stop the Russian fleet was the peninsula Gangut, where in 1714, the Swedish fleet, under the command of Vice Admiral Vatrang, consisting of 15 line ships, 3 frigates, 2 bombardier ships and 9 galleys, met the Russian squadron of 99 galleys, which was commanded by Admiral General Apraksin. About a month the parties did not take active actions until the Tsar arrived at the location. Peter, having studied the situation, decided to drag the galleys overland. On July 25th, local peasants informed Vatrang that the Russians are clearing the area on Gangut Peninsula, fearing that Russians will penetrate into Åland skerries. Swedes sent frigate, 6 galleys, and 2 skirbots under the command of Rear Admiral Ehrenschölder, with the purpose to prevent Russians from launching galleys on water. At the same time, Vice Admiral Lilieux, at the head of 8 line ships and 2 bombardier ships, had to approach the place of the Russian fleet and make sabotage or force the enemy to leave. July 25th. Russian vanguard noticed the movement of the enemy. Peter I, at the head of 20 galleys, immediately moved forward to personally look at the movement of the enemy. Fearing that Lilieux detachment blocked the only way out, the Russian command decided to try to slip into the Åland skerries using the gap between the detachment Lilieux and the main squadron. Around 9 a.m., 20 galleys successfully broke past the enemy. Because of the calm, Swedish line ships could not prevent the enemy. Artillery fire open from a great distance was ineffective. Following the first detachment on the breakthrough went 15 galleys vanguard. By this time, blew a weak wind allowed the Swedes to maneuver, but this time the galleys passed without losses. Vatrang, annoyed by the failure, ordered the detachment Lilieux back, and himself at night moved his ships away from the coast. At this time, the main part of the Russian squadron was preparing to break through, but having learned from the watchposts about the movement of the Swedish fleet, Peter decided to wait until dawn to find out the location of enemy ships. At 3 a.m. at the military council, the Russian command decided to break through along the coast at 4 a.m. Galleys moved forward, lined up in column. The lack of wind again played into the hands of the Russians. The Swedes desperately tried to tow line ships with boats closer to the shore, but only 3 ships were able to approach the enemy at a distance of shot and open fire. Not causing the enemy significant damage, only 1 man was wounded. 1 galley ran aground and was later captured by the enemy. The rest passed without damage. Thus, Ehrenschölder's small detachment found himself face to face with the entire Russian fleet. Realizing the hopelessness of their situation, the Swedes took a position near the coast, covering the flanks with islands. Narrow passage did not allow the Russian to fully realize their numerical superiority. Only 23 galleys could attack simultaneously. Before the battle, the Swedes were offered to lay down their arms, which the Rear Admiral refused. At 1400 hours, a blue flag was raised on Apraksin's galley, and a cannon shot rang out, after which the Russian ships moved towards the enemy. At a distance of about 100 meters, the enemy opened fire. The Russians greatly outnumbered the Swedes in firepower. 23 galleys had a total of about 135 guns of various calibers against 94 guns of Ehrenschölder's squadron, so in a 500-meter wide area, about 230 guns were concentrated, approximately 1 gun for every 2 meters, creating an incredible density of fire. After the fire of the enemy somewhat weakened, 12 galleys on the flanks moved to board, while 11 ships in the center restrained fire frigate. Converging, the sides opened fire with muskets. Distribution of personnel on the Russian ships suggests that the command planned to first neutralize the weak flanks of the enemy. On 6 Russian galleys of the left wing were 1,237 people, 40% of whom were grenadiers and guards. 1,401 men were on 6 ships of the right flank, 70% of whom were from the guards and grenadier companies. In the center, on 11 ships, were only 854 soldiers. In total, 3,900 Russian and about 900 Swedes participated in the battle. Despite fierce enemy resistance, the Russians captured all the galleys on the flanks and then attacked the frigate. By this time, to the place of battle approached the galley, one of the 4 sent to bypass the left flank of the Swedes. The frigate Elephant was a pram, a small flat-bottomed vessel with a shallow draft, well adapted for operations in shallow water and skerries. Despite its small size, its boards significantly elevated above the attacking galleys, making it difficult for Russian boarding. Besides, the Swedes were not going to surrender and fiercely resisted. Galleys, one after another, pierced to the sides of the frigate, with each minute increasing the number of attackers. According to the memories of eyewitnesses on the deck, it was so crowded that many fighting fell overboard. In the end, Russians break the resistance of the Swedes. The Russians lost 124 men killed and 342 wounded. The Swedish losses amounted to 941 men. Rear Admiral Ehrensold was wounded and captured. Immediately after the breakthrough of Russian galleys in the Åland skerries, Swedish fleet dropped anchor and went to Stockholm to protect the capital from a possible invasion of the Russians. Victory at Gangut allowed the Russian fleet to seize the Åland Islands, threatening the enemy's capital. The Swedish army was forced to withdraw from northern Finland, and the navy abandoned offensive action, giving the initiative to the enemy.